be aware that there's certain applications that have built-in encryption and there's certain applications that don't. If you're using remote desktop protocol, it's not encrypted. It sends clear text, not clear text, it sends screenshots of all the video that you're seeing on your screen across the internet. You can encrypt it easily using the VPN technology, and then there's other solutions like LogMeIn and go to my PC that already have that encryption built in. So there's no worries. You just look and say, hey, I'm in an encrypted browser session. I understand that this is encrypted. There's nothing more that I have to do. I don't have to hire an IT guy to make sure I'm secure. It's already done for me. So just more things to know. Regulatory compliance. You're going to understand what those are, what those needs are for your particular business. We have guys on our staff that are very, very into compliance issues. They know HIPAA very well. They know PCI compliance. We can pass firewall tests and get into the system and say, let the PCI compliance standards run a test against us. We'll go through and modify your firewall settings so that you're appropriately secured and go from there. So it's important that you know somebody, if you don't know how to do your own regulatory compliance, that understands what those requirements are. Because we could go into a firewall and say, hey, you've got open ports, or you've got a service running on your web server that's not compliant with your regulatory compliance, and we'll be able to fix that right away. Somebody else trying to do that may have more of a challenge. So disaster recovery is another big topic, right? The benefits of having it in the cloud are that you potentially don't need to actually worry about your own disaster recovery, or that's the thought process, right? Somebody out there is backing up my equipment or backing up my application, right? So you have to understand what they're doing, okay? You don't just take it for a grain of salt that, hey, this is a cloud-based application. I'm sure they've got retention that I can go back 7 years, right? Because that's what my HIPAA compliance regulations require. Well, no, you go back and you ask them for 3 weeks, and I'd be surprised if they could do that. So understand what they can and cannot do and what they will do. And obviously, if there's something that's required of you by compliance issues or your own personal benefit, saying, well, what if I deleted something a month ago and I want to go back to that? You need to understand what they're doing to back it up. And if they don't allow you to have a retention policy, then you need to build one. Okay? So is it less cost to back up? Potentially, if you have them backing it up and you understand what they're doing and you're okay with their backup solution, absolutely. If you want more of a retention policy, like I said, it's going to increase the cost of what you're trying to retain and how much data you have. The more data, the longer the retention policy, the more dollars it costs you. So those are some of the pros. The dependent upon disaster recovery procedures by the vendor is, I guess I'm kind of overshadowing what I've already said, but make sure you understand what the recovery procedures are. If you aren't comfortable with them, then you need to have somebody else address them in another way. And then I keep kind of talking over my next segment, but again, compliancy is one of the main driving factors for reasons why people have to do these certain security and disaster recovery things. So I keep reinforcing that because I want you to understand how important it is. If you're running a small business and you don't have any compliance issues, then good for you. That's great. Do you still want to have that kind of technology so that you're safe that your business could sustain the disaster? Then absolutely, look into that. So the main driving reasons for people to co-locate and ask for some sort of off-site recovery strategy is because, compliancy issues. All right, so obviously, cloud computing has been around for a long time. Okay, maybe it's new to a lot of us because we're starting to finally get the advertisements in our face, and Microsoft's trying to ready you for the new version of the operating system. It doesn't have many cloud computing features built into it, but you look for a company that's reputable, that has been doing it for a long time, or is partnered with somebody that has been doing it for a long time and isn't looking to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of companies out there right now that are actually not, familiar with cloud computing as a company. So their culture is looking at it as a commodity, like selling a T1 or any kind of internet service. So they're looking at it going, hey, I'm the salesperson in this Fortune 500 company, and I need to meet my quota. I need to sell all these cloud services to you. So they're not really going to be looking at potentially your best interest, because their best interest is making their quota for the month. Your best interest is this cloud solution going to work? So I would look for companies that have been doing it and know that industry and are not just acquiring other companies and adapting those procedures to it. Because you're going to find that you're going to have a whole abundance of salespeople and engineers that are going to try and sell you the product like it's a commodity, which it is a commodity, but they're selling it more as I need to sell this, I need to sell this, and not what's right for my customer. So again, you talk to your IT consultant. Not all applications will run well in the cloud. I touched on that earlier. Just if you have an IT person, make sure that you involve them in your decision-making processes. Don't get ahead of yourself and think, oh, I've got to get into the cloud because Microsoft, I saw the ad on the TV while I was watching my television show, right? Don't just jump in and say, hey, everybody's doing it. Maybe I should do it too. So there's a lot of different underlying issues with your existing infrastructure, bandwidth, any kind of security issues that maybe need to be adjusted or tweaked. Maybe you don't even have the right appliances, security appliances to even do it. So I'm going to touch on just a brief overview of the different types of cloud services so that you can kind of understand what they are. VMware is the predominant virtualization platform in the market today. It's been around the longest. They're a proven platform. It's all based on Unix, so any of your IT Linux gurus are going to love it if they don't already, which I'm sure they already are familiar with it. VMware's competition is really only Microsoft's Hyper-V, and Hyper-V is a good solution for certain scenarios. Hyper-V is going to be obviously dependent upon a Microsoft operating system, which in itself is a flaw. We all know how well Windows runs when we see the blue screen of death or something automatically rebooted the machine because of a Windows update. So Hyper-V's flaw is that there is, to back it up, they have developed a new platform where Hyper-V will run on a Linux kernel. So there is a standard base version that only runs as a virtual machine, but still it's running on the NT kernel. Sure.
You're a business owner and operator, and you're aware of these things, and you're giving a set of product names here, like you're in the industry. How does one practically test some of these things if they want to test beforehand before making a buying decision?
Most of them have some sort of free version of them. So if you're a Microsoft partner, you can get Hyper-V, and you really don't need to pass any kind of certification or competency test. You just go to Microsoft's site and say, I want to be a partner. That is pretty much all it takes to be a Microsoft partner. So for a small fee, you can get a development application that you can use to try and test Hyper-V. VMware ESXi is a free, totally free version of VMware. We actually internally, all of our new servers that we're rolling out, we're making sure that they're VM compliant, meaning that they support USB pass-through and some other features that may be required to run a virtual machine. So a lot of our new our customer servers, they're actually being virtualized right now and they don't even know it. They don't need to know because it's running in a virtual machine. When they access the server and they go to their S drive, they're still seeing their S drive. They don't know that the machine's running in a virtual environment. They don't need to know that. But what we're doing is we're preparing our clients for the fact that the virtualization is coming, whether they're ready for it or not. Let's put them on a virtual application or a virtual machine architecture and then build those servers. And so what we can do is we can basically take VMware and say, all right, here's my existing physical servers. Instead of just migrating those over to VMs, why don't we just clone them? Why don't we just take an exact replica of that machine and dump it into the VM server, and then we can instantly decommission all the hardware. Apparently I've got some competition back there. Need some ice? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, my point is that you could have a server that's running virtual and you don't even know it. Okay, the application runs the same. The only benefits to it are now if you decided, hey, I want to have a second server because I've outgrown my first one. Well, you don't have to go out and buy the physical hardware again. You just buy a license from Microsoft, Windows 2008, whatever the latest version is. We install it as the next virtual machine, and it runs on the same hardware. It shares the CPU, it shares the RAM, it shares the hard drive space. So all this stuff is more, like I said, it's a commodity. It's a way of taking a resource and dividing it up into more usable pieces. So if you've got a server right now at your office, which many of you probably do, you've probably got a server that's a domain controller that's sitting there and it's running at about 5% utilization all day long. That other 95% of CPU could be used for other things. Why not leverage that? So maybe you need to buy some RAM and expand it because all the new operating systems are so RAM heavy. RAM's cheap. It's definitely cheaper than buying a server, you know? So those are the kinds of things that people are looking at now, you know? Obviously you don't want all your eggs in one basket. If you've got a couple servers and you're going virtual, or you want to get a couple of new servers to take out 8 or 10 servers, put 2 servers in place so that if you do have any kind of issues, you back up the VMs themselves and you're able to restore them to another machine and bring them online instantly. So if you have a RAID array problem, I don't know if I'm talking too high level, but if you have something wrong with your data and you can't access it, you can roll back the entire operating system, everything in it, and it's just a virtual machine. It's encapsulating the entire Microsoft operating system and all the files on it, bring it up on another machine in about 20 to 30 minutes, if that. Depends on the size of the VM, obviously, right? So from a disaster recovery and a recovery standpoint, it's a much more efficient means to an end. There's going to be, you know, obviously more complex environments as you get into the 20 to 50 servers and up, where you're using SAN technology and a lot of replication and snapshotting goes on. I'm not going to get into that too much. If anybody's interested in talking very high level virtualization, we've done some very large projects, and I'd be happy to talk to you about those. So the other types are software as a service. We touched on that. We are a Google Apps reseller, for whatever that's worth. But you know, we use QuickBooks Online internally. We have obviously an ERP or management software that talks to that. So we're not actually using that on a day-to-day basis. But a lot of companies are using Salesforce already. They understand the value of, you know, having that salesperson that works in Kentucky or Michigan that, you know, needs to be able to access all the company data. I didn't mention SharePoint, but SharePoint can be considered a cloud software as a service as well. A lot of companies are using that to kind of develop internal application processes of their own, more of a development application process. So remote access, you know, a lot of applications are going to run if you just connect to a data center and use a VPN connection, right? So you're not going to want to take your old application that's running in Fox Pro or DOS. Or if you're using any kind of old legacy applications, you're definitely going to want to talk to an IT person before you say, hey, let's go virtual with this. Now, there are situations where you can put it in a terminal server or Citrix server environment where the server is hosting, you know, your front-end database utility, whether it be .NET or an EXE. And then you've got your SQL servers on-premise in the data center as well, so you're utilizing the LAN speeds to communicate internally and just sending across screenshots. That may work, but you still want to identify whether or not these old applications are going to be supported at all. So terminal services is Microsoft's version of remote access. This is basically terminal access. You can have dumb terminals, WISE terminals, PCs, any type of device that will support the RDP protocol that can talk to these devices. It's basically a way of saying, all right, I want say I've got 50 locations. I've got a main office, we've got 20 servers, and we want all of our remote branches to be able to access the same information as we do without having to use server or SQL replication across 50 sites. So you build this terminal server farm, you know, it could be anywhere from 2 to hundreds of servers in a farm. And you give them an IP address, they punch it into RDP, or if they're a WISE terminal, the WISE terminal connects up, brings their machine online, and it looks just like they're running Windows XP or Windows 7 for whatever version they're using. I think most people are still using XP. That trend, I think, is going to change in the near future. But those kinds of applications work well, but there's limitations. There's a lot of printing issues. There's a lot of redirecting file access. There's challenges that go along with trying to make that environment. A lot of companies originally, when they started talking cloud before everybody started marketing the cloud, started to do these terminal server farms, and that was several years ago. And now there's companies that have taken their entire infrastructure and put it out into these terminal servers and realized that, you know, there's caveats to it. What if my internet goes down? Or what if I don't have a redundant connection? What if it's slow? And I've got, you know, 50 locations that are all trying to access this one pipe that is down. So you've got to consider that as well. LAN speeds are definitely much faster than any